Hello and welcome to the short Vort on Parshas Vayera. Since I was in Baltimore for a wedding and stayed by friends and visited friends for a few days, it's appropriate that today we're going to discuss the value and importance of friendship. So at the beginning of the Parsha, it says, Vayera Hashem, Elav Hashem Be'alone Mamre. God appeared to Avraham Avinu in the plains of Mamre. After Avraham was commanded to have a Bris Mila, to be circumcised with that covenant, so he consulted with three people, Aner, Eshkol, and Mamre. Aner and Eshkol, they gave Avraham advice and they warned him about the risk of going through with the Mila, that that he'd be weakened, he'd be vulnerable to attacks by his enemies, that as an operation, he would lose a lot of blood and his life would be at risk. However, Mamre told him that, just remember Hashem was with you. He saved you from Nimrod. He saved you from mighty kings. So trust in Hashem and follow his will and go through with the circumcision. So this Dvar Torah is based on Rabbi Zev Leff Shlita's Shiurei Bina outlook and insights on the weekly portion. And he asks four different questions, and he says, why did Avraham need to ask advice about doing a mitzvah? Of course, Avraham was going to do a mitzvah. And if he needed advice, why did he not go to Yeshiva Shem Ve'ever and ask the heads there, as opposed to going to these three peers? Third question is that if out of these three people, two of them stressed the dangers and one didn't, why didn't he follow the majority? And finally, Mamre was rewarded, but why weren't Aner and Eshkol punished for giving bad advice? So we have to remember that when God created man, he consulted with the angels, and that was in order to teach us a lesson that when you have a decision to make, you should consult with someone, even if they're on a lower spiritual level. As it says in Pirkei Avos, Perek Aleph, Mishnah Vav, Knei lecha chaver, acquire for yourself a friend, even if that friend is at a lower spiritual level. This way you could seek advice from him. But why would you want to seek advice from someone on a lower spiritual level? So we have to remember that when it comes to things regarding ourselves, everyone is biased, everyone is subjective. And the Meiri explains that one needs perspectives, such as from friends, that are removed from the person's own subjectivity and biases. And therefore, a friend could be equal to or even less on a spiritual basis, yet offer advice if they can be objective. And they only have to be objective in this particular case that's needed to solve the person's issue. The Rashba, Reb Shlomo ben Avraham ibn Aderes, he died in 1310, and he was born in 1235 in Spain, and he's one of the great commentators on the Talmudists. And he adds that if one has decided, even if one has decided for himself what he was going to do, you should still speak to someone else, because it's not just the action that you take, but the thought that you have while you take the action. And therefore, the purpose of a friend's advice is to provide objective view of the issue at hand, and they must not introduce their own biases into the equation. They should be asking, what does this person need? How would he think? If I was that person without the biases that he has, what would I think? What would I do? So Avraham knew, of course, that he was going to circumcise. Hashem told him to do it, but he wanted to elevate his level, so he went to three peers who he thought that they could relate to. Since they were his Bali Bris, he had a covenant with them, so they knew what a Bris was, and they would advise him objectively about whether or not to do the Bris Mila. When it came to Aner and Eshkol, they actually didn't give advice. They didn't say, "Oh, don't." No, the Midrash doesn't say that. They said that they were told him, "Don't do the advice." They just said these are the risks, and that's because they used their own biases. This is what they were concerned, and it would have been that Avraham would do the Bris, but he would have in the center of his mind that there are risks here. So it wasn't bad advice. It was really no advice, because they didn't feel that's the objectivity requirement. However, Mamre, he thought about if he was Avraham, how would he act? He said, I remember that Hashem has protected me and has been there. And so when I do the action, when I do a Bris Mila, I would have faith and trust in Hashem, that Hashem would deliver me. And for this action by Mamre, that he was free of objectivity, which is something you need for Hashem. You have to put aside your own needs and desires to follow Hashem's will. So he was rewarded by Hashem appearing in his land, in his estate. So may we be zocha that we receive and give objective as well as good advice. Thank you for listening. Have a wonderful week and a wonderful Shabbos.